Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program. Symbiosis with the Research Office, the library's role in capturing, tracking, and understanding research impact, which is sponsored by Elsevier. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. Now I'll just put some links in the chat for where you can register for upcoming webinars or watch previous webinar recordings. So before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. So all the attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speakers. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you like or would like to be addressed. Also, there's closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom right corner of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version and where to access today's slides. And I'll also put a link in the chat for where you can access today's slides. Okay, and with that, we are ready to get started. So I will hand it over to our moderator for today, Emily.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sabrina. It's so great to be here and welcome everyone. My name is Emily Singley, and I'm the Vice President of North American Library Relations at Elsevier, and I am delighted to be here moderating today's discussion. Our speakers today have really wide, diverse experiences in the areas of library leadership, in research impact, and bibliometrics. And today we're going to be having a discussion. We're going to ask them to share their insights as to how libraries develop impactful research evaluation programs and how they have built effective and collaborative relationships with other research-focused units on their campuses and at their institutions. And the format, the way we're going to be doing this talk is really a free-flowing conversation. And we hope that you will be able to join in at the end. As Sabrina mentioned, we're going to be having the Q&A and share your questions, your comments. So be thinking about that as we go through this discussion today. We'd love to hear whether there's similar work happening at your institutions, any sorts of challenges you might have or opportunities that you know about. So I'm looking forward to that. And so here's a little bit about what we're going to be covering today. We're going to start out with some introductions, and we're also going to ask for you to share why you're here today and have some audience poll questions, completely optional, but we always kind of like to get a sense of who's in the audience. And then we'll have our discussion and close with Q&A. And so now I'm going to ask our panelists to give a quick introduction and tell us a little bit about themselves. So let's start with you, Anita. What can you tell us a little bit about your background and your role at Syracuse?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Anita Kukin. I'm a liaison librarian to Falk College of Sport and Human Dynamics. So I work really closely with about 7 academic departments that spans social sciences and health sciences combination. And I do research consults, evidence synthesis consultation, instruction, collection, a little bit of collection development, and of course I build relationships. I'm always in conversations with folks. I'm also on the research impact team. I came to the research impact team just for a quick background because these conversations were happening a lot in my areas, and I was picking up on a lot of anxiety around that, and I wanted to help help, and I needed to learn myself too. So so I started teaching myself, and then we reorged, and I became part of a subgroup of liaison librarians that we call the Research Impact Team. So now on to the next person.
Great,
Laura?
wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, well, let's go alphabetical. How about we do Consuela next?
Guess this works better when you unmute. Hello, everyone. I'm Consuela Askew, Vice President for University Libraries and University Librarian at Rutgers. You will note that I am not a research impact librarian. My background is actually in reference and assessment, but I am going to be coming at this conversation from the perspective of the organization and from an administrator's perspective. And I look forward to learning more from my esteemed colleagues on the panel.
Wonderful. Thank you, Consuela. And another Syracuse person here, Emily.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Hart, and again, I'm from Syracuse University Libraries, and my title is Science Librarian and Research Impact Lead. I'm also serving as the chair of the Senate Research Committee this year, which has been an interesting role as well. Similar to what Anita said, I am kind of half-time library liaison to 7 different STEM departments on campus, and that includes doing things like instruction and research consultations, as well as collection development. And then the other piece is I lead our research impact team, and actually similar to Anita, it was a need that we saw in the libraries where we were getting requests for consultations on things like metrics and responsible research assessment. And so we saw that need, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, but we did a reorg of our department, and then research impact team came to be. So our background, our expertise has grown a lot in the last few years to wrap around this service.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. And Laura, close us out.
Hi, as you said, my name is Laura Bredall. I'm the Bibliometrics and Research Impact Librarian at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada, for those of you who aren't familiar with the area. A little bit about me. I've been in this role for just over 4 years now. Before that, I was a liaison librarian as well for a number of years in the STEM area. I was interested in research impact in that role, and then had the opportunity to, apply for this position within the same university. So I've been here enjoying that for the last 4 years. I am going to talk a little bit about the structure of our services a little bit later, so maybe I'll leave that for now. But yeah, nice to see everyone here.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. It's just wonderful to have you all here. Looking forward to the conversation. But before we get to that, let's take a couple of minutes here. And we have some audience poll questions. So thank you, Sabrina. She's got them right there. So you should see on your screen right now 3 questions. Again, completely optional. Feel free to skip or get a cup of coffee at this point. But we're interested in learning sort of your background knowledge. Maybe you have a deep background, maybe you're very unfamiliar. And we're interested in what kinds of collaborations you do around this on your campus, and how the library is viewed, which is something I'm always really kind of interested in, is how libraries are viewed by other units on their campus. So feel free to take a couple of seconds here. And then we'll take a look at the results. Give everybody a few more seconds. Let's see what kind of results we have coming in here. Okay. All right. So you should now see, I think we can all see what your responses were. Really? Okay. This is interesting. So we've got not too many people with a deep knowledge or understanding. That's fantastic. That's why we're here, right? Good. So some knowledge, most of you are sort of in the middle, right? 64%. And some no ideas where to start. So that's great too. So hopefully this will be a good start for you. And then in terms of collaborations, we've got kind of a mix here. Not too many folks feel like at their library they collaborate routinely with other research support departments. And then mixed in terms of would like to do more or feel somewhat separated. So I think that's one of my motivations for putting this session together was really that's what I've been hearing a lot from all of my librarian colleagues is, you know, we need to find ways to do this more at our institutions. So that reflects that. And then, yeah, not again, similar, right? Not too many libraries feel that they're an integral partner in this work. A lot of people not involved, a lot of people in the middle where they're a resource for various types of support, but not a lot of people doing this kind of work intensively yet. So that's interesting. Wonderful. Thank you for that. That's really great information for us to get some background. I appreciate that. All right. So good. So at this point, so I guess we're going to take the slides, stop sharing so that you can see our faces and really kind of kick off the discussion. So I want to start with just kind of like definitions and some scene setting. We often hear terms like research impact or bibliometrics or output reporting, all these sorts of kinds of terms, but it isn't always clear what we mean. So I want to start with you, Laura. How would you define research impact? What does that actually mean for your library? If you can just kind of define that for us in just a few words.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just responding to the poll a little bit, understanding that there's a lot of people that are new to this area or looking to learn more. I think this is really important, a really important place to start for all of us. And also maybe even before I answer, I should also say that I think a lot of us coming into these positions weren't experts before we started. Yeah, we can all nod. So if you're interested in this area for your own professional development or your library's asking you to work in this area, don't feel too intimidated. And there's a really great growing community that can support you as well. But generally, and I might be oversimplifying my response to what research impact is, but in really broad strokes, it really just means the attention that research is getting in various ways, right? Really, like we want to be able to, sorry, I have my notes here. Yeah, we really want to be able to know, and I use the word attention because we want to know how much research is being used by others in various ways, right? So what this use looks like, usually when we're talking about something like bibliometrics, is through citation or collaborations with others. So really that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the quantitative measurement of research and how we can look at it in a whole variety of ways. And this means that in a lot of our work, in a lot of the work that I do, we're looking at research outputs such as like journal articles, conference proceedings, books, book chapters, those things that we can actually capture in our research databases that we routinely use at academic institutions. Now, I also want to really emphasize that when we do this work and we talk about like the quantitative measurement of research impact, this is not talking about all sorts of other types of research impact that we can capture, maybe not necessarily quantitatively. You know, there's things like knowledge mobilization or other types of research impact that we can't necessarily capture numerically. But when we talk about research impact in this area of bibliometrics, we're often talking about the quantitative stuff. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that, but that's sort of my best take on it. Emily?
That was a great overview, Laura. I just wanted to say, I think that one of the directions we've taken kind of reporting as well, or, research impact bibliometrics, is looking at it holistically. So not just talking with people about what their, what metrics we're able to grab at the end, or what counts we can grab at the end, but how are they thinking about it through their whole process? So if you're deciding whether to make your publication open access or whether it has a DOI, and how does it work throughout the cycle? And if you do more on this end, there's going to be more attention that we can grab at the other end. So, again, like Laura said, the traditional definition is measuring, looking at those metrics, but it's I think in terms of how we explain it, or at least how we've created services, it's more of a wraparound approach, the whole holistically to research impact.
And additionally to that, it depends on the discipline too. So hearing your faculty members' story and what's valued in their discipline is really important. For my public health folks, they can be STEMmy, but they are often community health workers. So they value the citation counts, but they more so value the impact on the community. Like this service or this wastewater treatment development during COVID saved X amount of lives, saved the university X number of dollars. All of that in my areas is really important to my faculty. So it's more the responsible use of those metrics. We have those conversations a lot too.
So, and I'm going to actually piggyback on what Anita just said in terms of the community impact. That is also a factor in my libraries. One of the pillars of the university president for the university is our contribution to the common good. And so when we're looking at research impact through the eyes of faculty, particularly in the research in biomedical health sciences, it's that impact on community and in other disciplines as well. But also the reach of the output. So who's citing the research that our faculty are publishing? Is it mostly concentrated within the United States, which is well and good, but are we making a global impact as well? So.
Yeah, excellent points all around. Yeah, thank you so much. The point about sort of going beyond citation count, whether it be a disciplinary distinction, I was talking to one librarian once who said, they talk to their art professor who, puts on shows of art and people come see it. And that's like a citation, right? So how do you capture that? Or computer scientists who build a large language model and put it up in Hugging Face and people reuse it. And there's so many different disciplinary distinctions. So thank you for that, Anita. And your point on community, Consuela, is great. Sure, we had an impact in the discipline, but did we have an impact more in society or in the community writ large? And I think that's something that's becoming much more interesting to the research community. Excellent. So now what I want to do is a little scene setting for each of your kind of campuses and institutions. So let's start with Syracuse. So Anita and Emily, just set the stage for us. Can you describe how research impact assessment takes place on your campus and what departments are involved in that work? And where does the strategic leadership sit for that? Is it in the library? Is it collaborative? That kind of thing. So I don't know who wants to start, Emily or Anita, but can you kind of just draw that picture for us for Syracuse University?
So for this, I'd say that in some ways, research impact is still kind of new, and again, when we're talking about, so the question is specifically research assessment, and I'm going to define that one more time as we're looking at the outputs. So everything that Syracuse University is So it might be creative works, scholarly publications, research, what people are creating, and then who on campus is involved with measuring that. There isn't one body on campus that is kind of leading that initiative. So there are multiple big players, though, I'd say. So the libraries is a big player in that, where we manage our research information management system, which is, really important in terms of the profile piece, as well as the back end reporting, where we're collecting those, again, understanding what people are producing, how they're collaborating, things like that. We managed that with the Office of Research until recently, but their priorities have shifted more towards the front end of bringing in grant dollars. And then we also work closely with our Office of Institutional Effectiveness, which is situated in Academic Affairs, and they're responsible for our faculty activity reporting system. So they're capturing different types of outputs in different ways. So they capture like teaching activities, as well as what people are doing with their research and their creative activities. And then we also have an institutional research office, which is looking at, they're doing a lot of analysis on different data coming out of campus, but they overlap with things like rankings. So they'll use something like Scopus to, calculate a research ranking. And the libraries, I think, works a lot with all these different groups. We're looking at things like how our systems connect on campus and how they share information and information flows, and trying to do things like reduce the duplication of data entry for faculty. The libraries play a big role by providing a lot of the subscription resources that we use to do research impact work. So, we're very fortunate at Syracuse University, but we have a RIM system right now. We have Scopus, Web of Science, also Dimensions, which has been an incredible addition to our resources. And a lot of those products also have analytics tools built into them. So I think the libraries kind of serve as a crosswalk between all these, resources and services, and, just making those connections and understanding those systems really well makes a big difference. I'm going to see if anyone else wants to jump in.
I can piggyback really quickly on what Emily said, because I come at it from, she comes from the system university-wide perspective. I come up and through as a liaison librarian through my whole college, Falk College, and work closely with the Falk Office of Research and Development, mostly in a way to support engagement in developing research. And all the ways that Emily was talking about in a holistic approach when faculty are, at different stages of their careers, helping them step through their tenure and promotion process. So I come up from a grassroots kind of way and work closely with the Office of Research and Development at Falk, which then works with the main Office of Research. And I also work with staff as well in media and communications. Like, for example, we use experts, the Pure researcher profile, and Falk was the first to embrace experts because it had a reporting, or has a reporting module that's really helpful for seeing where research is happening across a college, and that's really helpful for the Falk Office of Research and Development. So those are the kind of ways that I get involved to meet the university-wide effort and strategy. So, and if anybody else wants to add to that.
Great, thank you. Consuela, do you want to give us an overview of Rutgers? Yeah.
Sure, I'll jump in, and I am going to preface my response by saying that in comparison to my colleagues on the panel, Rutgers and our libraries are still kind of in the early stages of growing our research services support. That's not to say that we have not been providing these services, but across the university, the departments and divisions that contribute to research impact, as Emily mentioned, institutional research, the Office for Research. There are also various departments on each of the different campuses, just by virtue of the complexity of the way our organization is built. We have a lot of disaggregated services going on. So, they don't necessarily work in concert with each other just yet, but we have a new senior vice president for research who has come into the organization and is doing that necessary work of wrapping his arms around all of the activities that are happening across each of the 4 chancellor-led units and trying to understand where we can realize some efficiencies in our reporting structures, our workflows, and in our service deliveries. The libraries is on board with that. And so we have been working very closely with the senior vice president and with members of his staff and the Office for Research and trying to understand, where we might overlap with some of the educational components that they provide, as well as how we can work together in concert with the resources, such as Pivot, such as Scopus, Web of Science, and other types of resources. And just in general, how can we work together more closely so that we can provide seamless researcher support to our faculty?
Yeah,
So we're growing,
fantastic.
but we're not near the Syracuse level yet.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think that's very unusual, especially for as you mentioned, a complex organization where you have multiple campuses and med school and all this other stuff. And I think that's very true. I've certainly experienced that in roles I've had where there's pockets, right? It's everywhere, but it hasn't been sort of consolidated into one strategic direction. And so now, Laura, tell us about, because I think at Waterloo, you sort of have done that, right? Where it sort of is more centralized and strategic. So can you give us a little bit of a sense of how that works at Waterloo?
Yeah, I just want to point out that I think there's a difference between strategic leadership and the actual work of the assessments that's being done often. At least that's how it works at Waterloo. We have, like you said, pretty centralized strategic leadership of bibliometrics and research impact work here. We have a long-standing working group that's made up of some key players across campus, like associate deans of research or their delegates within their units, other people across campus that, are interested in this type of analytic work at the institutional level, or, just want to learn more or have, a say in some of the decisions that we're making around larger projects and that sort of stuff, or just be aware of things. So there's that level. We also have this group reports up to like an advisory group that's made up of like senior leaders in the institution. So our vice president of research and international is on that group. We have similar to Emily, what she mentioned, we have an institutional analysis and planning group. So I think it's an associate provost that sits on that. And then our university librarian is also part of that advisory group. So that's sort of like the top-down management or oversight of these activities. And I think it's really key because it brings awareness sort of up through those channels and that advocacy down. But a lot of the actual work around the assessments does trickle down to, people like me in the library. And I end up doing a lot of I'd say like coordination and collaboration amongst these units. So there's people within each of these units that I'd say I collaborate with more on a day-to-day basis. So if there's, requests coming through from our institutional analysis and planning department, they want an annual report, that sort of stuff, then I'm working with those people more directly. I'm not having to get major approvals through the working group or anything, but they're definitely advising and keeping up to speed with what's happening on campus. And if there's larger projects, we're updating a major white paper that was written before I was in this position. So that work has been sort of advised through our working group. So yeah, it is sort of, I'd say, more centralized and established, but there's still like really strong collaboration across our departments and or units, I guess, research support services, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about some of those as well, but I just wanted to point out that, you know, the leadership and the actual work, it's intricately linked, but they can be separate, and both are sort of like key functions within the university.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the kind of the scene setting, the overview from all of you, and the differences are interesting between your institutions. But it's sort of a common thread that I'm hearing is that the library often plays that connector role, and that sort of and I think Emily and Anita, you mentioned it too, that sort of system management and information management role of, you know, we have a RIM system, we have Pure, we have these databases. And sort of managing how it gets used across these different units on campus is often a library role, and it's interesting to hear that from each of you. Great. Well, I want to keep us moving here, so let's talk about our I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to jump to success stories if that's okay. So I want each of you to share like one collaboration, a story of one research collaboration that you considered to be kind of particularly successful at your library. So why don't we kick this off with you, Anita? Can you share what you think is kind of an example of doing this work at your library that was particularly successful?
Sure. Well, because I'm part of the research impact team, I'm not only supporting Falk College of Human Development and Family and whatever, Falk College, sorry, but I'm working across the university too. So as a team, we 4 librarians support other departments on campus as those conversations pop up. And recently, I guess I'll share a recent collaboration we had with an early career faculty member who was at the beginning, you know, they were sort of established already, but still at that early stage where we as liaisons can be most impactful ourselves in helping them find and develop their portfolios in a way that they can capture the attention or instigate or influence the attention that they get on their work. So when we work with other departments, we liaisons work with other departments outside of our liaison appointments. We bring in the liaison for that area. They may or may not be on the research impact team. So because we're three years in now, Emily, into this reorganization, I'm still learning, just along with most of you out there too. So it's a constant process, and I just want you to know that I'm still learning how to support all of this myself, and I'm very open and transparent about that. So when I meet with, for example, this person was from our public administration and international affairs group, social sciences, it's not quite so easy. It's not simply a bibliometric conversation. It's a conversation about, you know, what do they value, getting to know them as a person. While they're in public administration and international affairs, I came to find out that they do a lot of their research in public health, which was like, oh, I can talk about that, you know. So I brought in the liaison for that area, and we had kind of like a pre-game prep along with another colleague on the research impact team, so that we could, you know, have a plan of attack, like look at the researcher profiles that this person already has, look at their CV and what publications are out there, what things could we recommend right off the bat. So prepared to meet with that person. Have some thoughtful questions ready for the conversation. And then when the meeting happens, listen to their story first, be open and listen to their pain points, find out what their publishing goals are, again, from that holistic approach. What audiences do they want to reach? Are they publishing in the right outlets? I've come to find that this person was really in tune to author order and publishing in the right journals, because one of this person's pain points was, while they're in public administration and international affairs, their other colleagues within their department don't understand the work that they do in public health. So they had to find models outside of their department to kind of help guide their progress and their research goals, and how to report on these goals and show this work and what its value was. So that was a big part of it, plus their teaching load, because they're part of a general academic department. They have more of a teaching load than other departments do, which was interesting to know. So this person also had to seek grants to buy out of their teaching load to make room for more scholarship. So these are pain points that faculty are, up against, that we just don't see unless we enter into these conversations. So this person was also worried about their H index and where they publish and the small size of research teams, because that has bearing on the reach of that work, right? Whereas someone in STEM, there might be one article and 100 different authors. Well, right there, it's going to be distributed amongst those authors and their institutions, in their institutional repositories, all that good stuff. So if you're working with a small research team, your reach might be smaller than you'd like it to be. And then this person was also kind of unaware of the institutional repository and how that feeds into Pure, the researcher profile, as well as distributes that content out there. So there were a lot of great and interesting revelations, I think, on both sides, because there also is a great deal of misunderstanding of how metrics are, what metrics mean, and we're in constant communication. I know even Emily and Laura, you both run into this all the time, even though you're in the STEM fields. From the social sciences perspective, sometimes I think it's even worse because they just don't have that kind of understanding. So, or they do, but it's always good to check,
Exactly. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was a really rich conversation. Sorry, go ahead.
Would I be able to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating listening to Anita talk about her work. And maybe I'll make another dichotomy here, like earlier, but I do find that there's what you're talking about often is that planning. Like the question is, how do I have research impact? And a lot of the work, I'd have to say, that I do is sort of after the fact. More the question is, what type of impact have we had?
Yeah.
And like both are extremely valid questions, right? It's just a difference in the way that the questions are asked, or the people that are asking the questions, right? So Anita's working a lot at the individual level, I'd say. You're helping individual researchers more along that liaison model where you're being asked for help at like a certain point in the research cycle, right? Or research life cycle, I guess it's called. Where a lot of the work that I do, I'd have to say, is sort of reflective of the institution as a whole, or a group as a whole. So yeah, did you want me to talk about an impactful project? If you're, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, since I have the mic, I thought maybe I would mention a project that I think is impactful, not necessarily because at the point in time it had like a huge impact, but the project itself has sort of like been useful it has been reused, I guess. Like the work has been reused for other purposes. So a few years ago, I was approached by the Office of Research to help with a major grant. And in Canada, we have these Canada First Research Excellence grants. I don't know what an equivalent in the US would be, but they're these huge multi-year grants that, you know, not everyone gets. And if you do get it as an institution, it's like a big deal. And so the University of Waterloo was undergoing the process of applying for this. It's a, you know, multi-phase process. I was involved in a couple phases. At the beginning, it was more exploratory. We had developed some actually fairly robust search strings to search our research databases based on some research areas of excellence that the university had identified in our strategic plan. So we had already been working on some of that, and I could actually use some of that work for this grant cycle process. So we were able to like provide the Office of Research with some guidance using, like, you know, the research impact metrics. Of course, they were looking at all sorts of other things to help them make their decisions, but this was like a small part of that. Once they got to the actual application phase where they had said, okay, we're going to do like submit our application on this like broad research area, what we chose was health technology. So that was their target, right? So then we ended up doing some analysis around like specifically this research area, you know, health technology. What does Waterloo do in this research area, and how can we provide evidence for our grant application to say, yes, we're excellent in these research areas for these reasons, right? And again, you know, the metrics that I was helping provide were just like, you know, a small portion of that whole story that the institution was assembling, right? There was many arms to this project because it was such a big application. But now, okay, so we didn't get the grant.
Oh, no.
Everyone, you know, crawled under their desks for a few months, and you know, and then emerges this, you know, we're going to go ahead and create an Institute of Health Technology anyways. And so then that work was not wasted. I was able to, you know, help the heads of that, like, you know, unit develop some metrics for like ongoing analysis of sort of the growth of health tech research at the University of Waterloo. So we did some work there. And I just like, yeah, sometimes when you're doing things and things they're not successful, you kind of think like it's a waste of time, but you can sort of have that linear usage of a lot of this work, and it all sort of like builds on each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those two stories were great back to back because Anita, yours was very, here's how librarians one-on-one work with individual faculty members, right? And I think it's something a lot of librarians can relate to because it does feel like a reference interview, right? Like you said something about listen to their stories, right? And it's like, oh yeah, you sit down, you work with them, you hear their pain points. And then Laura, you're like doing this work kind of more institutional level, like can we understand the institution's impact in certain research areas? So these kind of two different areas that libraries are working in. We are quickly running out of time. This is such a great conversation. So Sabrina, can we have another couple hours? Because I think we can just keep this going. But I do see we've got tons of Q&A to get to. I want to give Consuela and Emily just a couple minutes each to just kind of highlight any responses you might have to what we heard from Anita and Laura, and also just anything else you might want to share before we cut over to the Q&A. And also, I want to just, for the people who are putting questions in, thank you so much. And I want to just shout out that there is an upvote feature. So that little thumbs up. I know we're not going to get to all these questions because there's some great ones in there. So I will start with the top upvoted ones. So start clicking those buttons. So thank you. So Consuela, let's go over to you for a second here.
So I'll try to make it quick. I'm going to speak more to the folks who responded to the poll that they're kind of in the learning stage about research impact, and talking about a success story from Rutgers, which is actually still in progress. The libraries, as well as the Office for Research, are working together as part of an Ithaca S&R study titled Building Campus Strategies for Coordinated Data Support. Some of the elements of that study the data that we'll be gathering that will contribute to the larger study is going to be very useful for the Office for Research and the libraries to build support services together, and as well as looking at other resources that are needed to support our faculty and to strengthen their research impact. So there are 3 areas that I think will be very helpful to us. The first is assessing the landscape, which allows us to better understand the delivery of resources and services. So what is it that OFR are subscribing to and paying for in terms of electronic resources, and what services are they delivering to support researchers throughout the research ecosystem? And conversely, what are the libraries doing? The second is exploring user needs. And this one, actually, this part of the process requires interviewing the faculty. Go figure. So we're actually talking to the researchers, asking them what their needs are. And I think we're going to learn a lot of useful information that we can respond to. And then the other is around designing communication tools and service offerings. I mean, sometimes because we build it and we have created it, doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to naturally just come. We've got to promote it. We've got to market it. We've got to keep communicating about it so that people know that these services exist and how it will benefit them. So that's sort of the necessary work, the foundational work that we're doing towards building better research impact.
That's fantastic. Thank you. What a great project, and a good way to sort of build those bridges to researchers, to the research office, and so forth. So Emily, why don't you close us out before we cut over to Q&A?
Okay, sounds great. So I guess one of the stories that I think is worth highlighting that I've been involved with recently is kind of at the larger scale version of what Anita talked about. So one of the services that we've really, I guess, have dove into for our research impact team is supporting faculty that are going up for 3rd-year review, tenure, and promotion. And so Anita was talking about like the individual use case with tenure and promotion. But an interesting thing that happened recently was we've become really closely collaborating with the Office of Institutional Effectiveness, and specifically the team that has been rolling out our new faculty activity reporting system. So in one of the ways that it's been a really fruitful relationship is that I've worked with them now for a couple years because I was on the rollout team representing the libraries for this faculty activity reporting system. So we talked a lot about the overlap with things like our RIM system and the faculty activity reporting system and flow of data. ORCID has been a big part of that conversation. But when we found that it was mutually beneficial for us as they're going around to campus partners and different departments, they're doing kind of a workshop on this is how you use the faculty portfolio system. And while you're thinking about updating your CV and putting all of this information in the system, here's someone from the research impact team who is also offering services around tenure and promotion. So they're really good at, gathering metrics and helping you tell your story, but also have really strong knowledge in things like your ORCID profile, setting that up, and your expert Syracuse profile, which is again a RIM system, or Google Scholar. And those are all ways that you can harvest that information, and it will be those are all things that will feed into the faculty activity reporting system and grab that content. So we've been doing like this little, I guess, roadshow where we go around with institutional effectiveness and do like a 5 to 10 minute spiel on these are research impact services through the libraries. And, again, this is a great time to think about that in combination with, annual reporting or going up for tenure and promotion. So it's been a win-win for both, and a great partnership that I think is going to, continue for a while.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Just having that be the kind of a collaborative effort between those 2 units on campus, and having the library be able to say, look, I'm here to talk about this, but guess what? We've also got these other services. What a great opportunity there. It's fantastic. Those are all such good stories and such different flavors of kind of how research impact happens at different levels at different libraries. So I thank all of you for that. So much to think about here. So many questions. Ashley, if we could bring back the slides really quickly here. Our panelists have all very graciously provided us with resources. So there's actually 3 pages of additional resources here for you to explore, including information about their individual institutions, like you've heard experts at Syracuse, the Pure portal there that you can explore, Waterloo's page, Rutgers's page, a whole bunch of information here. Including Laura has a book. I can't even imagine writing a book, but so lots of great stuff here for you to explore. Thank you to the panelists for providing that. And now, though, let's get to your, and quick shout out, Elsevier. We've heard Scopus mentioned, we've heard Pure mentioned, we have a faculty information management system, a RIM system, etc. So I had an obligatory shout out here for all the great services we provide to libraries in this space. And yeah, so let's spend some time on questions. And I also want to just mention that our email addresses are here on this last slide. The slides will be shared. They are up on the website, so you don't feel like you have to scribble this down. So if you want to bring up our faces again, Ashley, and we can dive into some of these questions with the time we have left. Thank you, everyone, for putting your questions in the Q&A and for upvoting them. And we've got 32 upvotes for this question from Cassandra. So Cassandra writes, do you think there is a significant difference between describing support as scholarly communication versus research impact? So who wants to take that one? Laura, you want to dive into that?
Sure. I wasn't sure if I should put my hand up for real or virtually. I might actually try to quickly answer the top 3 that I'm seeing popping up here, because I think I have fairly quick responses for them. Honestly, I don't see there being a significant difference between describing them. It really is whatever works at your institution. I've seen them described as both. I think the term scholarly communication is probably more of an internally facing term. Research impact might speak more broadly to an institution as a whole. Again, just my opinion. The IR question is interesting, but I don't think that they're ever going to be irrelevant. I'm actually really keen to see more like sort of collaborative IRs happening. And better data coming out of those. One of my frustrations as a research or bibliometrician is that you can't get great citation information out of institutional repositories. I'd love to see better metadata on that front. So I don't think that they should, I don't think they should go away. Maybe they will, but I don't think that they should. And the third question about the ad hoc manner, yeah, then the word programmatic research assessment services to me, and this is something I've talked recently about with some other colleagues too. And I struggle with this because we have done some more like standard reporting frameworks here in the past, and we kind of got rid of them, to be honest, because the questions can vary so much depending on whoever is asking the questions and what it is that they're using the information for. So to have sort of like a really structured, like I'm thinking, people are using Power BI dashboards a lot now, and it's like, can you multiply that across various departments and all this stuff? But their questions are so unique that maybe you can do a standard set, but it's going to be limited, and people are always going to want more information. So even if you have like really structured programmatic assessment services, yeah, you're going to have to tailor things anyways. So you might not actually be saving yourself a ton of work in the end by standardizing stuff. Maybe I'm reading the question a little bit wrong, but I thought I'd tackle those three all at once.
I wanted to jump in really quickly on the scholarly communications versus research impact question. And I think that what Laura said makes a lot of sense, that, I don't think you can have research impact without understanding scholarly communications, but the research impact might have more meaning in some ways than on campus, if scholarly communications is a little bit of a jargony word for libraries. But I'd say that, so within our Department of Research and Scholarship, which is where we live as liaisons and our research impact team lives, we have a digital and open scholarship team that we work very closely with on things like faculty workshops and outreach, and we pull each other into conversations and collaborations all the time. And so I really don't think I could be a good research impact librarian if I didn't understand scholarly communications practices well, because again, the way we approach it is holistically. So if you're thinking about, again, things like the visibility of your data and where you're putting your stuff, and does it have a DOI or is it open access? How is that playing into the visibility of it down the road? So it's so intertwined in terms of the final, like what you're doing outreach for. So I think it's more not labeling it, but it's just a fluid service that you're using, principles of scholarly communications and research impact kind of interchangeably to talk about these important conversations on campus.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's a very complex area, right? And it sort of depends on what angle you're taking in terms of what language makes the most sense. Excellent. We have probably time for one more question. So let's go with the next most upvoted one from Elizabeth. This is a long question, but it's about balancing limitations of the corporate sources of our data, so Clarivate, Elsevier, et cetera, starting to encounter more questions and concerns about the reproducibility and accuracy of bibliometric data when it comes to these traditional sources. So I know that research integrity and the quality of data is something we think about a lot. Obviously, I work for Elsevier. How are, I don't know who wants to start on this one, but in a couple of minutes, does anyone have any comments on data sources for this work? Yeah, Emily.
I'm just going to start us off really quickly and say that when we're pulling, if for example, a good case that comes up is, again, we're doing tenure and promotion metrics for people, and we're looking at all of those products. So we're not just looking at Scopus or Web of Science. We use Lens, we use Dimensions, Google Scholar. It's gathering all that information and providing the context around where it's coming from and how to talk about it. So the final story isn't the metrics, it's how you explain it, I guess. And we also have the conversation of, responsible use of metrics, and but we're always providing multiple, I think, sources when we can, and not just driving one product or a couple types of metrics. It's a story that we're telling using all the data we have available to us. And in terms of things like reporting cases, not tenure and promotion, it's looking at the problem that you're trying to solve or the use case, and then seeing which source matches up. So I mentioned before that having systems knowledge is really important, and like understanding the differences between all of those and when one is going to be a better fit for a certain case than another is, anyway.
No, that's a great answer. Thank you. So contextualizing multiple sources, understanding the different data sources. And I think that's something libraries and librarians have always traditionally done really, really well, is understand data sources and how, data relates and fits together. So that's great. So I know we are pretty much at time now. I apologize to everyone whose questions we didn't get to, but thank you for these wonderful questions. And hopefully, Sabrina, we can capture these look through them afterwards. And I do also want to remind everyone that we did provide our email addresses in the slides, which are available. So please do reach out to us individually if you want to continue this conversation. Happy to hear from anyone. So I'm going to thank our panelists here today. Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I learned a lot. It was really interesting to hear from all of you. And thanks to everyone who joined us. And I am going to pass it back to you, Sabrina, for closeout.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, I'll just echo Emily and say thanks so much to Consuela, Laura, Emily, and Anita for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to Emily for moderating the discussion. And thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording, as well as where to access today's slides. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from this session and hope to see you again in the near future on another webinar.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.